When I first moved into this peaceful American neighborhood, I never thought life would throw such a messy twist my way because everything started off calm, warm, and quiet, the kind of suburban dream where kids ride bikes in the street and everyone waves at you even if they don't know your name, and I felt lucky to finally have a life that didn't feel like a constant storm. But all that changed the moment the new neighbor arrived, a woman named Cassie, who moved into the house right next door with a smile that looked sweet from a distance, but sharp when you got close, the kind of woman who wears perfume strong enough to announce her before she turns the corner, the kind who laughs just a little louder than necessary when a man is around, and from the second she stepped out of her shiny car, I could feel it deep down in my bones, that kind of instinct women have, the kind that whispers something is off. My husband Ethan, being the friendly golden retriever energy man he is, was the first to say hi, and I watched Cassie tilt her hair, flip her lashes back, and give him a handshake that lasted just a little too long while her eyes moved over him like she was scanning a menu, and Ethan, innocent as always, just smiled back, telling her welcome to the neighborhood, without noticing the way she was practically studying him like homework, and I stood there next to him smiling politely, but inside I was thinking, girl, try that twice and we going to have a problem. For the first few days, Cassie acted normal, waving hi from her porch, watering her plants, walking her dog, smiling like every other neighbor, but then slowly, oh so slowly, she started showing her true colors. It began one evening when Ethan was in the backyard fixing our grill, and she popped her head over the fence with a bright, enthusiastic voice, almost too excited, saying, "Hey neighbor, need a hand?" And Ethan laughed and said he was good, but she kept talking, asking him questions about where he worked, how long we had been married, what he liked to do on weekends, and I could hear every word from the kitchen window, her tone soft, friendly, but way too personal, like she wanted to know more than she should. I stayed quiet, watching, observing, because sometimes silence tells you everything you need to know, and I noticed how she never once asked about me, never once referred to us as a couple, never said you and your wife. Always it was Ethan, this Ethan that, like, she was intentionally removing me from the picture, and that was the first red flag I folded mentally and saved for later. Days turned into a week, and then her timing suddenly got perfect, too perfect. She always managed to show up right when Ethan stepped outside, like she had some secret radar that beeped every time he opened the back door, and every day she would call out his name with a sugary tone, like, "Ethan, hey, I need help with this plant," or "Ethan, can you open this jar?" or "Ethan, can you check this noise in my garage?" I swear the woman had a never-ending list of problems that only my husband could apparently solve. And the funniest thing was she never asked me for help, not once, not ever, even though half the time I was standing right there, and I knew exactly what she was doing, because women know women, we can read each other faster than a book. Then she crossed her first real line one afternoon. Ethan was at work, and I stepped outside to water our flowers. That's when Cassie walked over, acting surprised to see me, like she didn't know I lived there too, and she said with this fake sweet voice, "Oh hey, I usually see Ethan around this time," and I smiled back, polite but firm, and said, "Yes, well today you are seeing me, hope that's okay," and she blinked, clearly not expecting my tone. She tried small talk, but I could feel that irritation in her voice, like she wanted to keep me out of the conversation, so I listened, let her ramble, and then she casually slipped in the sentence that made my jaw clench. She said, "Your husband is such a good neighbor, always helping me. I don't know what I would do without him." And there it was, the line, the intention, the message hidden behind her little compliment. The way she emphasized always. The way she said my husband. The way she tried to act helpless around him. She was trying to build a connection. To create dependency. To place herself in his daily routine. But she didn't know me. Not yet. I answered her calmly with the kind of smile that tells another woman, "I see you, girl, don't play with me," and I said, "Yes, Ethan loves helping, but I am sure you will become more independent soon, since you seem pretty capable," and she froze for a second because she understood the undertone perfectly. But she didn't stop. Oh no. She just got smarter, sneakier, softer. One evening Ethan came home and casually mentioned that Cassie had brought him homemade banana bread, and instantly my brain said, "Excuse me, what now?" Because that woman had never once offered me anything, never even asked if I liked banana bread, and Ethan, totally clueless about the unspoken battlefield between women, just said it was nice of her. Nice. Sure. Very nice. And that night while he watched TV, I thought about everything: the patterns, the timing, the fake helplessness, the little gifts, the intentional avoidance of me, and I realized Cassie was trying to insert herself into my marriage, slowly pretending to be a friendly neighbor, while testing boundaries inch by inch. But she didn't know something important. Something she was about to learn the hard way. I am not the type of wife who panics. I am the type of wife who plans. I don't react. I observe. I strategize. And when the moment comes, I strike clean, quiet, and unforgettable. Cassie thought she could get close to my husband. She thought she could charm her way in. But she didn't see me coming. Not yet. But she would. Because I was about to show her exactly who she was dealing with. And trust me, she would never forget it. The next phase of Cassie's grand little performance started on a sunny Sunday morning when Ethan stepped out to wash his car, and just like magic, I heard her screen door creak open. At the exact same moment, she walked out wearing leggings a little too tight, a tank top a little too small, and that exaggerated surprised face like, "Oh wow, you are out here too, Ethan, what a coincidence." And I stood in the kitchen doorway, coffee in my hand, watching her put on her little show that honestly was so obvious. It was almost embarrassing. She leaned over the fence acting like she was checking on her dog, while really checking on my husband, and she said, "Ethan, do you know anything about car engines? Mine has been making a strange sound. Maybe you could take a look later." And her voice had that soft, helpless tone that women use when they are trying to pull a man into their world like they need saving. Ethan, being Ethan, nodded without a second thought, completely unaware that Cassie was basically flirting with a highlighter. But before he could agree fully, I stepped outside with the calmest smile and said, "Actually, Ethan promised me we would have a movie marathon today, so he will not be free." And I gave Ethan a look that said, "Just trust me." He nodded, slowly, confused, but he knows me well enough to understand when I am handling something. Cassie blinked like she had just heard the most shocking news of her life, and she said, "Oh really? I did not know you both had plans," her tone a little stiff now, and I replied, "Yes, we always have plans on Sundays, don't worry, someone else will help you." And I walked back inside, without waiting for her response. That was the first time I pushed back directly, and I could feel the shift. She was irritated, and irritation creates mistakes. A few days later, another incident happened which confirmed what I already knew. Cassie was getting bold, maybe too bold. It was around 7 in the evening when Ethan got a text message and his phone lit up on the table. I did not look at the text because I trust my husband, but before he could pick up the phone, he said out loud, "Oh, it is Cassie. She is asking if I can help her assemble a shelf tonight." Tonight. At 7. When she had all day to ask anyone else. When she clearly knew Ethan was home with me. And the thing that bothered me was not the text. It was the time. The intention behind it. The testing of boundaries. Ethan looked at me with confusion because even he felt the weird timing, and he said, "I think she could have picked a better moment." And I said calmly she could have, but she did not, and Ethan nodded, understanding immediately that Cassie was not being a normal neighbor anymore. He texted back a simple "I am busy," and that should have been enough, but no, Cassie never liked hearing no, and she replied instantly saying how she really needed help, how she could not do it alone, how she was scared it might fall and injure her, and the drama she created in 3 messages was enough to make a director proud. I could feel she was fishing for sympathy or attention or a reason for Ethan to come over, and I watched Ethan type back politely, "Maybe tomorrow morning if I get time," and I felt this tiny victory in my chest because he finally noticed something was off too. But when Ethan went to shower, his phone buzzed again, and this time I checked the screen, only the notification, not the message, because I respect his privacy, but I saw one word preview that made everything clear. Cassie, please. One word. Lowercase. Soft. Desperate. A kind of emotional hook that women use when they want a man to feel responsible for them. That was the moment I decided. Game on. But instead of confronting her directly, which she probably expected, I decided to approach this the smart, subtle, classy way, the way that makes the other woman doubt herself, the way that makes her realize she is playing against someone who knows every move before she makes it. The next morning, I baked muffins, real homemade muffins, not the fake sweet ones she was handing out to Ethan, and I walked over to her house with a polite smile and knocked on her door. She opened it wearing a robe, mascara smudged like she had tried to make herself look soft, vulnerable, and she acted surprised again, like I was the last person she expected to see. I handed her the box of muffins and said in the warmest but firmest tone, I brought these for you since Ethan said you needed some help yesterday. I thought I should check on you myself. Now there was a sentence with layers. Layers she heard perfectly. I saw her face twitch a little. She did not expect me to show up. She did not expect me to step into her scene. She wanted Ethan, not me. She tried to smile, but it came out tight, and she said, "Oh, that is so sweet of you. I did not want to bother you with the shelf." And I said gently, "Actually, if you need help with anything, you can always come to me first, since I am home more often." Another layer. Another message. Cassie blinked. She understood. She did not like it. I stepped one foot inside her house, pretending to look around, and said, "I can help you assemble that shelf right now. Show me where it is." And she froze just a second too long before saying, "Oh, no, it's all right. I will manage later." Of course, she did not want me near that shelf. Because that shelf was not the point. Ethan was. I knew it. She knew it. She walked me out quickly and pretended to be grateful, but I could feel it. Her energy was restless now, like a plan interrupted, like something slipping from her hands. Over the next week, she became unpredictable. I saw her looking out her window when Ethan left. I saw her stepping out at the same time as him. I saw her pretending to jog near our driveway. I saw her pretend interest in things he liked. But she still avoided me. Always. A woman who avoids the wife is a woman with intentions. Every time. No exceptions. Then came the moment that changed everything. A moment she thought would bring her closer to Ethan. But instead, it handed me exactly what I needed to finish her little mission for good. A Friday night. A small neighborhood barbecue. Lots of people. Lots of talking. And Cassie wearing an outfit clearly not for the event, but for my husband. She kept circling him like a silent planet orbiting the sun. Close enough to shine. Far enough to pretend it was innocent. Until she slipped. And made the biggest mistake of her game. One that sealed her fate. And that was where my real move began. The neighborhood barbecue was supposed to be a simple, relaxing evening, the kind where people bring homemade salads, kids run on the grass, music plays low in the background, and couples laugh together about nothing. But Cassie had apparently decided it was her personal runway, because she showed up wearing a fitted dress that did not fit the occasion in any universe, a dress that screamed "look at me" more than it screamed community gathering, and the moment she walked in, her eyes did a quick scan of the crowd, stopping exactly where I expected, on Ethan. I watched her pretending to greet our neighbors, but her attention kept drifting towards my husband, as if she was waiting for the perfect moment to slide in like a whisper between sentences and conversations, and I could see her plan forming. She wanted to catch him alone somewhere, even for a moment, even for a second, because a woman like her only needs a small opening to plant something. Ethan was standing by the grill laughing with two of our neighbors, and Cassie wasted no time. She approached him with a fake shy smile, holding a plate of something she probably bought, not made, and she said, "Ethan, could you help me carry this to the table? It is a little heavy." And the way she said heavy made me want to laugh, because it was literally a small bowl of pasta salad, so unless it was filled with bricks, she did not need help from anyone. But Ethan, being polite, reached out instinctively to assist, and I timed myself perfectly. I walked upright, then placed my hand gently on his arm and said, "Oh, honey, I can help her. You finish your conversation." And Ethan nodded with a smile, trusting me, while Cassie's smile faltered just a little, like her script had been flipped. I grabbed the bowl from her hands effortlessly and said softly, "I do not think you needed help, but it is fine, I got you." And she blinked at me, clearly thrown off, and followed me to the table, trying to regain her sweet fake tone to say, "It is so nice you are helping." And I answered with a calm smile, "Of course, that is what neighbors do, right?" Cassie forced a laugh, but I saw her frustration bubbling under that expensive perfume. As the evening went on, she kept hovering around Ethan, waiting for any moment when I would step away, but I did not step away. I stayed calm, controlled, smiling, talking to neighbors, but always within range, always present, never letting her get more than a few seconds near my husband alone, and she noticed. She hated it. Women like her hate boundaries. They hate being blocked. And most importantly, they hate being watched by someone who knows exactly what they are doing. But then, her impatience made her slip. And it was a big slip. At one point, Ethan stepped away to grab a drink, and I watched Cassie follow him like a shadow, and she walked up behind him, touching his arm lightly, pretending to stumble like, "Oh, I am so clumsy. Could you help me hold this cup?" And Ethan stepped back, slightly uncomfortable, and said, "Are you okay?" And before she could get any closer, I approached them with a drink in my hand, sliding naturally between them like it was the most casual thing in the world. And then it happened. The moment that revealed her entire intention without a single word. Cassie looked at Ethan, not noticing I was already beside him, and she said with a soft, almost whispering voice, "You know, you are the only person here I feel comfortable with. Sometimes I feel like we just click." Click. That word. That one word was everything. And Ethan's face changed. That was the moment he finally understood. Completely understood. That this was not innocent. Not friendly. Not neighborly. He stepped back politely and said, "I think you misunderstand. I am married, and my wife is literally right here." Cassie froze completely. She did not expect him to respond like that. Especially in front of me. Especially in front of people. Her smile cracked. Shattered a little around the edges. And she turned toward me with a look that said she did not know what to do now. I stayed calm. Silent. Unbothered. Because I wanted her to feel that heavy awkwardness. That realization that her little plan just slipped out of her hands. Right in front of the man she was aiming for. She muttered something like, "Oh, I just meant friends, of course," and Ethan nodded politely, but firmly, saying, "Sure, but you should probably meet other neighbors too." And then he stepped closer to me, hand on my back, gentle, proud, protective, and Cassie saw it. She saw every bit of the connection she had been trying to interfere with, and she hated it so much it showed on her face. But instead of stopping, instead of taking the message, instead of stepping back, she did the dumbest thing she could do. Something only a desperate woman does when her tricks fail. She tried to create tension between me and Ethan. After the barbecue, as people started leaving, she approached Ethan, pretending to talk normally, but her words were sharp knives hidden under soft tone. She said, "Your wife seems a little possessive. Maybe she feels insecure around new people." Insecure. Possessive. 2 words she used intentionally. 2 words meant to stir doubt. To make Ethan question me. To make him think I was imagining things. But she did not know something very important about my marriage. Ethan does not question my instinct. He trusts it. Every time. So when she said that, Ethan actually frowned and said, "No, she is not possessive, she is just aware," which is more than I can say for some people, and Cassie's face fell because she realized Ethan was not drifting toward her. He was drifting away. I watched this from a few feet away, and I saw the moment she realized she had lost this round. But she was not done. She was embarrassed. Cornered. And cornered people often make reckless moves. Later that night after the barbecue, when we went home, Ethan sat me down and said, "I think Cassie is crossing boundaries." And I said, "Yes, I know." And Ethan apologized for not seeing it earlier, but I smiled and said, "You see it now, that is what matters." But the story did not end there, because Cassie was not the type to accept defeat gracefully. No, she still had one more move, one more attempt, one more bold step that she thought would shake me. But she had no idea. She was about to walk straight into the biggest mistake of her entire plan. And I was waiting, calm, ready, because the finale was going to be mine. The days after the barbecue were strangely quiet, almost too quiet, like the silence that happens right before a storm you know is coming, and I could feel Cassie pulling back, not because she gave up, but because she was planning something else, something she thought would give her control again. And I kept noticing the small signs. The blinds in her living room would shift when Ethan left for work. Her front door kept opening and closing at odd hours, and her dog barked every time she stood near the fence, staring toward our yard. Women like her do not quit easily. They simply change strategies. And one evening around 6, when Ethan was stuck in traffic and I was alone in the kitchen cooking dinner, I heard a knock at our door, a soft, hesitant knock that somehow sounded rehearsed. I opened the door, and there stood Cassie holding a tiny notebook, like she had come straight from a therapy session, her eyes big and fake gentle, like she wanted to play innocent victim now. She said in this trembling voice, "Could we talk? Your husband said I made you uncomfortable, and I want to clear the misunderstanding." And I leaned against the door frame, not bothered, not emotional, because I knew exactly what this was. She wanted to twist the narrative. She wanted to make herself look harmless so Ethan would feel guilty for accusing her, or worse, feel protective. But she was trying this on the wrong woman. I said, "Sure, talk," and she stepped inside slowly, like she expected to see anger, but I did not give her that. I gave her calm, and calm is scarier to people like her than yelling ever could be. She started with her speech rehearsed like a script. "I just grew up without close friends. I get attached easily. I do not know boundaries sometimes. I did not mean anything by it. I was just being friendly." And her voice cracked at the end, as if she was about to cry, but her eyes were dry, not a single tear. A performance. A bad one. I let her finish, and then I said the one sentence she did not expect: "You knew exactly what you were doing." Her face changed immediately. The mask slipped. Her shoulders stiffened. Her eyes narrowed just slightly. And she said, "What do you mean?" And I walked a little closer and said, "Women know women. We read tone, we read timing, we read intention. And you never came to me, you never asked for my help, you never treated me like part of the picture, you only looked for Ethan." She opened her mouth to argue, but I continued without giving her space. "You tried to isolate him, you tried to create dependency, you tried to make him feel responsible for your little problems, you tried to make space where there was none." Cassie swallowed hard and said, "That is not true," but her voice trembled because she knew it was, and I tilted my head and said, "You can fool men, but you cannot fool me, not even for a second." And she looked away, angry, embarrassed, cornered again. Then she tried a different angle, the bold angle, the desperate angle. She said, "Well, maybe if he did not enjoy talking to me so much, you would not feel threatened." Threatened. The favorite word of insecure women. I stepped closer, smiled calmly, and said, "Sweetheart, I have never once felt threatened by you." And the shock on her face was almost funny, because she was expecting rage, jealousy, insecurity, anything but the truth, which was simple: she was not competition. Not now. Not ever. I said, "Let me explain something clearly. Ethan is loyal, he is kind, but he is not stupid. He noticed your intentions sooner than you think, and he does not like women who circle him like lost puppies." And she blinked a few times, the sting hitting her pride harder than she expected. She whispered, "You think you know him better than I do," and I almost laughed, because the question itself was delusional. I answered with a soft, strong voice, "I am his wife, of course. I know him better than you could in 10 lifetimes. She took a deep breath, and then said the line that exposed everything: "The only reason he pulled away is because you interfered. He would have gotten closer to me eventually." That? Right there. was her truth. She thought she had a chance. She thought she could get close. She thought she mattered. And now, she was angry that she did not. I stepped back and said, "You are living in a fantasy, and you need to step out of it, because it is embarrassing now." And before she could respond, I added, "And let me make this final. You will keep distance. You will not text him. You will not appear at the fence waiting for him. You will not pretend to need him. You will behave like a normal neighbor, or you will face consequences." And she froze at that word because she knew I meant every part of it. For a moment she looked like she wanted to argue, but she did not. Instead, she grabbed her notebook, clutched it to her chest, walked to the door with a stiff jaw, and left without saying goodbye. I watched her go, her shoulders tense, her pride bruised, and I thought maybe finally she understood. But I was wrong. She was not done. Not even close. The next morning, Ethan left early for work, and around 8 my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. The preview simply said, "You should know something." I opened it and my jaw tightened. It was from Cassie. And the message said, "I think your husband has feelings he is not admitting, maybe not to you, maybe not even to himself. He acts different around me. You should watch him more carefully." A lie. A dangerous one. The kind meant to break trust. The kind meant to create cracks. The kind meant to plant poison. But she did not understand my marriage. She did not understand the unity she was trying to shake. She did not understand that her last attempt was about to backfire harder than anything she had tried before. Because now, she crossed into a territory she should have never touched. She tried to manipulate our bond. And that was the last mistake she was ever going to make, because I was done being subtle, done being gentle, done being quiet. It was time for the final move. The move she would never forget. The move that would end her fantasy permanently. The message Cassie sent was the kind of message designed to burn bridges, to twist trust, to make a wife question her own husband. And she thought that one text would shake me, that it would crack the foundation of a marriage built on 10 years of honesty and loyalty. But instead of fear or doubt, I felt something sharper, something colder, something final, because she had crossed every line, and now it was time to close this chapter in a way she would never forget. I waited calmly for Ethan to come home, because I believed in transparency, and I wanted him to see exactly how far she had gone. And when he walked in, I handed him my phone without saying a word. He read the message, and his entire expression changed. Not hurt, not confused, but furious, the kind of quiet fury of a good man who finally sees the full extent of the manipulation. He said, "I cannot believe she sent this. This is insane." And I nodded and said, "This is what I have been dealing with." And he ran a hand through his hair, pacing for a moment. Then he stopped, looked at me directly, and said, "I am going to handle this." And I said, "No, let me. I know exactly how." That night we planned something simple but powerful, something that would show her the one truth she was refusing to accept, that there was no space for her here, no opening, no crack, no chance. And the next morning, when the sun was barely up, I walked out the front door, dressed neatly, calm, hair tied back, strong energy around me, and Ethan stepped out at the same time, holding my hand. And we walked straight to her house. I knocked. Firm. Clear. Not aggressive. Just final. Cassie opened the door slowly, and the second she saw both of us standing together, her face drained of color, her fake confidence slipped, and her voice came out tiny and shaky as she said, "Oh, you both came here. Is everything all right?" And I said, "Yes, we just want to talk for a moment." We stepped inside, and Ethan stood slightly behind me, like silent armor, a force she could not manipulate or twist anymore. I began with the calmest voice, because calm cuts deeper than yelling. I said, "You sent me a message this morning," and Cassie swallowed hard, trying to pretend innocence, saying, "I just thought you should know what I feel." And I held up my phone and said, "What you feel is not relevant. Feelings do not give you the right to make up lies." Her mouth opened and closed like she was searching for the right excuse, but none came. And then Ethan stepped forward and said firmly, "I do not act differently around you. I do not feel anything for you. I have been uncomfortable for weeks, and I tried to ignore it, to be polite, but you crossed every boundary." Her eyes widened like she did not expect him to say it that directly, and he continued, "You sent my wife a message trying to damage our relationship. That is not friendship, that is manipulation, and I will not tolerate it anymore." Cassie finally snapped, trying to defend herself, saying, "I only thought maybe you were not happy, maybe you needed someone who understands you better," and her voice broke halfway through as if she was exposing her true intention. But Ethan did not flinch. He said, "I am very happy, and the only person who understands me is my wife, and your assumption was not concern, it was wishful thinking." Her lips trembled. Her eyes filled with humiliation. The truth finally hit her, and she had nothing left to say. Then I stepped in with the final lines, the ones she needed to hear clearly, and without confusion I said, "Cassie, you are not part of our marriage, you are not part of his life, and you never will be. This fantasy you built ends here right now today. You will stop texting, calling, approaching, or creating excuses to talk to my husband. You will behave like a neighbor, nothing more." She whispered, "I was just lonely," and I said, "Then find friends, not married men, and if you cannot respect this boundary, we will take it further." Her breath caught, and she nodded stiffly because she knew exactly what I meant. We left her house with silence following us like a shadow, and when we stepped back into our home, Ethan pulled me close, kissed my forehead, and said, "Thank you for being patient with me. I am sorry I did not see it earlier," and I said, "You saw it when it mattered, that is what counts." But the story still had one more twist, one more moment, one more final scene, because some endings need to be witnessed to be believed. 2 days later, while Ethan was at work, I saw Cassie moving boxes into a small rental truck, her hair tied up, her face makeup free, her energy quiet, defeated, exhausted. She kept her head down, not looking toward our house, not looking toward the driveway, not looking toward the path she had spent weeks trying to walk. She was moving out. Not because I asked. Not because Ethan confronted her. Not because the neighborhood judged her. But because she could not stay where her fantasy had been destroyed, where reality had cut through her illusions, where she lost a battle she thought she could win. I watched from my porch, sipping tea, not smug, not proud, just peaceful, because peace comes when you protect what matters. As she climbed into the truck for the last time, she glanced once toward our house, her eyes meeting mine across the yard, and for the first time there was no arrogance, no flirting, no performance, only understanding, the understanding that she misread the story she wrote herself into, one where she never belonged. And I smiled gently, not cruel, just final. A silent message that said, "Game over." But this story does not end with her leaving. It ends with something stronger, something deeper, something far more powerful. A moment that showed exactly why she never stood a chance. Because that evening when Ethan came home, he wrapped his arms around me from behind, kissed my shoulder, and whispered, "You're my home. You are my person. And no one can replace you." A sentence that erased every shadow she tried to cast. A truth she could never touch. A truth she never understood. And just like that, the chapter closed. The house quiet again. The peace restored. But the final part still remains. The closing narration. The message to the audience. The power ending. I stood in the middle of my living room, the evening sun casting long warm stripes across the wooden floor, and I could feel the energy in the air shifting and settling, like the house itself finally exhaled after weeks of tension and chaos and quiet battles that only I knew I had been fighting. For the first time in a long stretch, I felt like the ground under my feet belonged to me again, solid, steady, familiar. It was my home, my marriage, my life, and no outsider, no pretty neighbor with forced intentions, and no one pretending to be innocent could walk in and rearrange the order I had built with my own hands. Ryan came downstairs, freshly showered, relaxed, shoulders soft, smile, the kind of expression he wore only when his mind was finally free from drama and distractions. He looked at me like he had not looked in weeks, warm, present, grounded. He slipped his arms around my waist, pulling me close in that way that always made the rest of the world fade away, and he whispered that he had missed the us we had let slip through our fingers while the neighbor played her tricks and set little traps to wedge herself into his daily rhythm. But now all that was behind us, and he wanted me to know that he saw everything clearly. I told him I was not angry anymore because I had watched him figure it out on his own, and sometimes the truth hits harder when it comes from your own eyes and not someone else's warnings. He nodded and kissed my forehead like a man who understood the weight of trust, the fragile nature of it, and how close we had come to snapping something precious. He promised me that he would never allow anyone to stand between us ever again, not even for a moment, not even by accident. Days passed, then a week, then two, and our house slowly returned to its regular heartbeat: morning coffee together, lazy Sunday pancakes, quiet drives to the grocery store, small inside jokes that made us feel like teenagers again. The kind of ordinary moments that become extraordinary when you almost lose them. Across the street, Emily's house stayed quiet, blinds drawn, driveway empty, porch lights dead. She was gone, really gone, and not in the way she pretended earlier. This time for real. She no longer walked her dog at suspicious hours hoping to catch Ryan outside. She no longer pretended she needed help lifting an imaginary heavy box. She no longer hovered around like she was waiting for an invitation that would never come. Her absence felt like the neighborhood had been vacuumed clean of a strange tension none of us asked for. One afternoon, I was watering the small herb garden near our porch when Mrs. Henderson from next door walked over slowly with her two dogs yapping around her feet. She leaned closer and whispered like she had been holding this in for weeks. "Sweetheart, we all knew something was strange about that girl. She was too friendly, too fast, too bold. We're glad you handled it the way you did." I smiled because it felt good to know I was not the only one who had sensed the shift, the wrongness, behind the sweet voice and polished smile. Evil intentions always slip through no matter how pretty the packaging. And I had caught it in time. That weekend, Ryan and I hosted a small barbecue in our backyard, just a few friends, some neighbors, hot dogs on the grill, soft music, warm evening breeze. Everything felt normal again. Better than normal. I caught Ryan watching me from across the yard the way a husband watches the woman he loves, the woman he almost took for granted. There was a softness in his eyes, a gratitude, and a lingering guilt that would take time to wash away, but he was trying harder than ever, and that mattered more than anything. As the night ended and the last guest left, we stood under the string lights glowing softly overhead. He wrapped his arms around me, resting his forehead against mine. "I am lucky to have you," he murmured. "Lucky that you saw through her. Lucky that you fought for us even when I didn't realize we needed fighting for." I held his face between my hands and told him he was not the only lucky one. Because I had seen a version of him who learned from his mistakes, who chose us without hesitation, who stood by me when the truth finally hit him. That kind of growth does not come easily. We went inside, closed the door behind us, and the silence felt peaceful, not heavy, not tense, just ours. A home without shadows or hidden intentions. A home where love stood stronger than outside noise. A home where the wife knew her worth and the husband remembered it. And as I lay beside him later that night, feeling the rise and fall of his breathing steady and close, I realized something important. People like Emily come and go, trying to step into places that do not belong to them, trying to create cracks where there are none, trying to test marriages they did not build. But a strong woman, a smart wife, a woman who knows her home and her husband cannot be replaced or threatened by a stranger with sugar-coated words. Because real love stands firm. Real loyalty returns. And real confidence wins quietly but completely. This was my home. My marriage. My story. And she never saw me coming.